Hello, everybody. I'm Patrick Donnelly, Program Director of the Frost Place. Welcome to the third day of readings of the 2025 Poetry Seminar. If you're looking for an online summer poetry conference where your work will get the focused attention of some of America's finest poet teachers, please check out the poetry seminar at frostplace.org. We'd love to have you join us next year. Our reader this morning will be Deborah Paredez, who leads our formalist track this year. Deborah Paredez is the author of four books: the critical memoir American Diva, the scholarly study Selenidad, Selena, Latinos and the Performance of Memory, and the poetry collections This Side of Skin and Year of the Dog. She is the co-founder of Canto Mundo, a national organization dedicated to Latinx poets and poetry, and the chair of the MFA writing program at Columbia University. Please welcome Deborah Paredes.
Thank you so much, Patrick, and thank you everyone for being here. Uh, I really am so grateful to be a part of the Frostplace community. Having taught here once before, it's really wonderful to just be around poets from all over doing such really great work. So thank you all, and it's really great to meet Kathy, at least virtually. I really, as someone who, as you'll see, writes. And is invested in the documentary poetry, I really gained so much from your insights and illumination yesterday. So thank you. I'm going to be reading poems from some of them from my book, Year of the Dog, my most recent poetry book, and then some stuff that's new that is from a project one of the projects I'm working on now. So the first several poems are from Year of the Dog. It is a documentary poetry collection that I wrote that, as you know, to use Kathy's wonderful sort of categories, it's part sort of personal truth and part, more grand societal ones, in which I explore the experience of being the daughter of a Vietnam vet. And it explores the role of my own experience and my father's experience as a result of that war, and also more broadly, Latinx experiences vis-a-vis war and women's experiences vis-a-vis war. And so it looks at it from a historical perspective and a mythic one, as you'll see in the poems. And the title refers to the year 1970, the year of my birth, the year my father was preparing to leave for Vietnam, and also evokes the mythic figure of Hecuba. As many of you recall, Hecuba, Queen of Troy, just wouldn't shut up about being outraged about the war. And when she was captured along with the other women by the Greeks after Troy fell and was being taken back to Greece, she just howled and howled and howled in outrage and grief, so much so that she transformed into a dog and leapt from the ship onto an island where she spent the rest of her days howling out in outrage. And so she became a kind of guiding figure, among others, for me in this book as I approached this, what it means to be a woman in relation to war and to cry out about it ceasingly. The first poem is in honor of our conversation and workshop yesterday about villanelles and the wonderful villanelle that we saw there. I'm going to start with a villanelle. It's called Wife's Disaster Manual, and it's actually a take on another mythic woman, Lot's wife. And I asked, what happens if she turns back not because she's sort of full of avarice and connected to her material belongings, but what happens if she's turning back because she wants to bear witness to the catastrophe? When the forsaken city starts to burn, after the men and children have fled, stand still, silent as prey, and slowly turn back. Behold the curse. Stay and mourn the collapsing doorways, the unbroken bread in the forsaken city starting to burn. Don't flinch. Don't join in. Resist the righteous scurry and instead stand still, silent as prey. Slowly turn your thoughts away from escape. The iron gates unlatched, the responsibilities shed. When the forsaken city starts to burn, surrender to your calling. Show concern for those who remain. Come to a dead standstill. Silent as prey, slowly turn into something essential. Learn the names of the fallen. Refuse to run ahead when the forsaken city starts to burn. Stand still and silent. Pray, return. This next poem, there's a series of poems I have in here that incorporate or reckon with the idioms. I was really trying to sort of show throughout the book the way that violence and and war kind of infiltrates our everyday life, and I wanted to take up sort of the most kind of banal and cliched language there was to sort of make it defamiliarize it for us, and also sort of reveal perhaps the violence that might be um, housed within it. A show of hands. My father taught me never to show my hand. Always play the hand you're dealt. Don't bite the hand that feeds. You got to hand it to him. He lived his life, hand to mouth. Even before Nam, he knew close only counts in horseshoes, and hand grenades go hand to hand combat. Idle hands are the devil's play into the enemy's handed over and out of his hands, ringing a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. He wasn't so good with his hands, took his life into his own blood on his hands, on the one hand, and on the other. This next poem is about a historical figure. I talk about mythic women, historical women, and myself in the book. And it is a poem about and for Deborah Johnson, Akura Najeri, who was Fred Hampton's partner and the mother of his child. She was 8.5 months pregnant when Fred Hampton was killed by the Chicago police and the state. When they shot into their apartment overnight, the two of them were in bed, and she survived. And much of what we know about that moment was her telling the story afterward. Lightning, Chicago, Illinois, December 4th, 1969, for Deborah Johnson. You didn't look down or back, spent the fractured minutes studying each crease and curve of the lawmen's faces, so later you could tell how it happened, how you crossed over his body, how you kept your hands up, how you didn't reach for anything, not your opened robe, nothing. How they said he's good and dead. How you crossed over the threshold. How you lifted one and then the other slippered foot across the ice. How you kept yourself from falling. How your bared belly bore the revolver's burrowing snout. How, 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 when the baby starts to descend, it's called lightning, though it feels like a weight you cannot bear. Lightning is when you know it won't be long before it's over. This next one's a sonnet. Self-portrait with weeping women. I know why I fell hard for Hecuba, chins skinned and lips split to blooming lupine on her throat's rough coat, hurl down the whole length of disaster. I'm sure I'd grown to know by then to slacken as a sail against the current and squall of a woman's woe. What could I do but chorus my ruddered howl to hers? When you're a brown girl raised up near the river, there's always a woman bereft and bank-wrecked, bloodied and bleating her insistent lament. Ay, Llorona, every crossing is a tomb and a tune, a wolf wail and the moon that turns me to scratch at the tracks of every mud-dirged girl. So these next poems are from a book I'm working on called Shore. Right now, it's called Shore, and it reckons with issues of migration and the sea and crossings and the many things we grieve, right, in relation to the sea, from people to the climate. Um, and the first poem I read is another sonnet. It's one of those poems, I'm sure everybody has one where, I had written it for one project and then that project fell apart. And this poem's sort of been wandering around in the wilderness waiting for a home. And then I started working on this book and realized, oh my gosh, this is the home that poem's always been kind of waiting for. I didn't know it at the time. So I wrote this poem a long time ago, even though it's in a book that has yet to come out. It's called The Gulf. The day upturned, flooded with sunlight, not a single cloud. I squint into the glare, cautious even then of bright emptiness. We sit under shade, Thea Lucia showing me how white folks dine, the high life. I'm about to try my first oyster. Thea spending her winnings from the slots on a whole dozen, the glistening valves wet and private as a cheek's other side, broken open before us. Don't be shy, she says. Take it all in at once. Flesh and sea grit, sweetmeat and brine, a taste I must acquire. In every split shell, the coast's silhouette, bodies floating in what was once their home. Change of address. Rate your pain, the physical therapist instructs. And I am trying not to do what they say women do, lowballing the number, trying hard not to try so hard to be the good patient. Scattered assurances lining the aisles like dead petals, and me left holding nothing but what's been emptied out. Obviously, I'm overthinking it. When I settle on someplace in the middle, 6 or 7 times a week, I walk past the street vendor on Broadway and say nothing while eyeing the same palm topped hat. The physical therapist asking me now for the name of that Chinese place where I sometimes go, asking for the patient just before me, a street vendor in need of a cheap massage. As I lay the plain wreckage of my shoulders in the shallow hollows the street vendor's body has left on the padded table in the center of the story I sometimes read to my girl. A cap seller sleeps under a tree's shade, waking to find the monkeys in the branches have plundered his wares. He waves his hands, shakes his fists until his rage makes him throw his cap to the ground, and the monkeys mimic him, and down float his caps, his fury finally fulsome enough to restore what he's lost. You've got to find another way to move, the physical therapist, modeling for me the poses to mimic, assuring her I won't move what's left of the heavy boxes later, unpacking the last of them. I learn about the woman who once lived here, Charlotte, who twisted the cap and shook out the pills. Charlotte, who swallowed and slipped into sleep in her last act of volition, here in this bedroom, where the westward windows go on longing for dawn. And I'm trying to move in a new way, to pull the nest of sloughed hair from the bathroom, from the bathtub drain, to move in the space of another's suffering, scrub the caked toothpaste from the sink, make a home in the space where suffering may meet its end. Okay. This next poem is a It was from a letter. I was writing a series of letters during the height of the lockdown. I was living in New York City, and I have a friend, Marina, who was living in Milan, two cities that were pretty acutely affected by that moment in time. And we were exchanging letters at the time. And so this is from a letter to Marina, March 23rd, 2020. It's called Il Pico, or The Peak. You speak of El Pico, by which you mean the dead have risen to their highest number. The pigeons, exquisite scavengers, bow their heads to forage and peck at the edge of your sill. Below, the shuttered windows, the sputter and hum of trucks rolling past and packed with the newly passed on. Close your eyes, you say, and you can feel the engine's ragged rasp rattling the pane. The birds and the wide boulevard, the headboard against your bedroom wall, all of it trembling together. A note the choir scales and holds. Right, I'll read two more. This is another one that I wrote in 2020 called Falling Bodies, set in that summer. I am not alone in watching my body giving up its truths, the dark taint of the dye job giving way to the gray, the fallen breasts, the slope and folds of my mother marked belly mound. I'm not yet 50, and already I've outlived some I've seen naked, the lovers I left, the children I watched die. I've long known how to look for the bullet left lodged in the chamber when unloading the gun. My aim isn't so good, nor my vision. It's getting harder and harder to read without pushing the page farther from my eyes. I haven't seen Thea since before the outbreak, only the sign outside the nursing home proclaiming its name, Buena Vida. In another time of plague, Galileo observed the speed of falling bodies, how no matter the differing weight of two objects, falling is an equalizing force. Imagine them, he wrote, joining together while falling. Sometimes, when you watch someone die, the only sound you hear is your own shredded breath. Other times, only their ragged gasps rending the garment of this realm. I watch the circling hand touch every number, hear the seconds stacking themselves into minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, the teetering years collapsing behind me, before me. I've had to give up running since I tore something in my hip, the same one where years ago I rested the baby, and years before that I dipped and flared on the dance floor. My back now gives way when I bend over to pull the load of soaked clothes from the machine. The doctor says only resistance and movement will begin to repair what's torn. At the end of the march, I bend toward the ground with the others, kneeling in silence for 8 minutes, 46 seconds. Spinning hover of helicopter blades and my daughter's fidgeting hands, the only sounds I hear. At the end of his life, half blinded by cataracts, Galileo still found a way to measure the distance between bodies scattered across the sky. Observed the ways the moon rocked itself back and forth as if saying no against the night. My daughter watches her dancing body on the video she's made in the living room. Another brown girl has filmed us all kneeling. Another woman's daughter has taken a cell phone video of a man as he is murdered in the street. All the girls watching. When we watch someone maybe we love, or someone maybe we don't even know, someone who is someone's grown child dying under the knee of another. The sound we hear is his muddled breath, his crying out for his mother, long gone and risen and rocking and rocking and rocking him still. All right, and then I'm going to close with a poem also from this new project, a sestina I wrote after I grew up I live in New York now, but I grew up in Texas, in San Antonio, not far from Uvalde, where, as many of you will recall, in 2022, there was a horrible school shooting, one of many in this country. And so the title of this poem is taken from an AP News headline, and that headline read, Uvalde shooting highlights role of doors in security plans. The teacher remembers pulling the door closed. She thought the door would lock because that door is always supposed to lock. The door failed to lock. They say when God closes a door, the shooter will fire through the door's windows. At first, they said she left the door open and the shooter got through the door. She remembers she had opened the door to carry in supplies, propping the door open with a rock. But she closed the door when she heard the shooter just outside the doors. I ran back into the building. I still had the rock in the door, so I opened the door, kicked the rock, and then locked the door. Later, they verified she had closed the door and the door did not lock. Later, there will be a closed door inquiry at the state capitol. It's through the closed door that all the men with guns will enter. The classroom doors have windows above the knobs. The glass on one door shatters from gunfire, and a man walks through the door frame and fires more than 100 rounds. A thin blue door connects one classroom to another. He shot the door, a girl in the classroom tells the 911 dispatcher. Through the door, bullets graze two officers, and they retreat farther from the door. No other men with guns will go near the classroom door for another 40 minutes. They said they needed the door's key from the janitor. It remains unclear if they tried the door to see if it was locked. The girl calls again and watches the door and covers herself in her dead friend's blood. And this is how the door between heaven and hell cracks open. The doorway is a thin blue line. The men with guns unlock the door and shoot the shooter, who shoots back from the classroom closet's door frame. The governor orders all the schools to check their doors each week, and all the doors everywhere come unhinged. And every door is a door, 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 is a door. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah, for those incredible poems. And thank you, all of you, for attending. Tonight's readers will be Reyes Ramirez and myself. Thank you and goodbye for now.